Chongo. Yeah, I think you got to drop that one. But personally, Dylan was in earlier, and I was like, oh yeah. He's like, oh, who else is coming? I'm like, Andy and Tom. Tom. He's like, Chongo.
This seems like an old nickname from drinking in university side of things. Chongo's here.
It was a friend's jazz funk band at school, and then I mentioned it to some people in the first week in university, and then everyone called me Chongo for 4 years. And most of my friends from university still call me Chongo. They don't know what my real name is.
I had a friend who I met before I went to university. We happened to be staying in a hostel together, and we happened to be doing the same one. He was called George, but when he told me his name, I swear he said Emmett. Mm-hmm. I have no idea where I got Emmett from, but I called him Emmett and introduced him as Emmett to everyone else. And he was like, my name's not Emmett, my name's George. And then we found it so fun and we called him Emmett. 10 years later, everyone, including most of his family, calls him Emmett, and I feel terrible about it.
I think you should feel very proud.
I did a bit first, and then I felt bad.
Well, you're starting Kahuna, right? That's apparently. There you go.
Gelb's nickname should be Kahuna.
Anyway, apparently
Have we started yet?
No, yet.
It's just going to be that's part of the banter at the beginning of the show.
No, never. No banter allowed. How dare you? Welcome to the Ancient Robot Games podcast. As always, I am Dougal.
And I'm Gelb.
And we are joined today by Tom Inglis, the maker of Pivot. How you doing, Tom?
Pivot.
I'm pretty good, thank you. Yeah.
That's awesome. So, Pivot is a game that you have made. What has brought you into board game design more than anything else?
Well, I've been playing board games since around 2016 now. Well, properly. I mean, I've probably played, I guess a lot of people have played board games throughout their life to some degree. Obviously started with, the basics back in the day, Monopoly, chess, well, quite a lot of chess as a child. I played a few things in the sort of noughties, like a bit of Carcassonne here, a bit of Catan there, but really got it properly into board gaming so about 2016. I had some friends that were really into it, and we started playing Puerto Rico together. And there's just spiraled from there really to this point. So, got a reasonable collection. I think just as part of that journey, just got interested in designs and thinking about designs and what I could do. But it's actually this man who's guilty for getting me into properly designing, because I had all these sort of ideas, and then we had a design session a year or two, a year and a half ago. Was it last February? Yeah, at my house, and that was the first version of Pivot I actually kind of properly tried to commit to paper and do something with. So yeah.
So it's Gelb's fault.
It's Gelb's
basically.
fault. Yeah.
All of this stress and hard work, we can always put on Gelb.
You're welcome. Pride.
Yeah.
So how does it go from you being, getting into board games, passionate player, you love your Reiners, you love your Knizias, maybe your Reiner Knizias at the same time, but how do you move from that to thinking, actually, I think I could do this. I'd like to try actually building one myself.
Well, I guess I am someone that has done sort of vaguely entrepreneurial things before. So I have tried to do tech startup things a few times. So I guess I have some experience of trying to get things going from scratch and seeing where they get to. So I guess there's a certain amount of base ability to kind of try and do things from scratch that's baked into that. And then, I guess I really like systems. I really like creating things, and I have a friend as well who's been very instrumental in helping me doing a lot of development on the game. My friend Rob, and we go into what's called the Mind Palace. Like in Sherlock, the kind of Mind Palace idea. So I think when this is a design which is relatively. It's not a complicated game to play. It's definitely kind of a medium complexity game, and we're trying to steer towards that kind of that accessibility, that lower play time. But it is something which has got a lot of interlocking systems and quite a lot of complexity in the way that it's designed. And changing little things here, twiddling little knobs there, can have massive ramifications. And so it's something which has proved quite an interesting journey in terms of thinking about all these things and actually spending a lot of more time with my friend than I had done in many years, just our shared experience of working together on this game, as well as other friends that have contributed as well. So it's really been a team effort. It's definitely not been a kind of a solo experience kind of designing this thing. It's working with a number of my friends and playtesting it and coming up with ideas and going to the Mind Palace. And
so usually when someone wants to make their first game, they are thinking, all right, I'm going to start small. I'm going to do something simple. maybe a card game, maybe a simple board game, but Pivot is not that. Pivot's quite complicated, or at least quite complex. Not necessarily from
complicated to design, not
complicated from a design perspective.
Yeah.
There are lots of bits, as you say. Small changes, small shifts of dials have huge ramifications, and I imagine balancing a game like Pivot is hard to keep in check when you're changing things that have vast changes. What has it been like going from I think I want to make this to actually seeing what that's entailed? Has it gone as you expected?
I don't think so. I don't think anything ever really goes quite as you expect it when you start out with something. I think this is version. Well, this is the version I took to Origins, but we're on version 57 of the game, so it's been through quite a lot of different versions, and some of those have had like point releases. At various times, I've optimistically thought that was the final version, and then we've kind of done like 33.1, 2, 3, 4, and then it's obviously not been the final version and blown it all up again. So we're probably at like realistic like version 100 or something like that by this point. So I think. The expectation that's going to be a little bit more straightforward and you're going to get to something sooner is probably over optimistic.
Why do you think that is? Why have you gone through 50, 100 different iterations of it?
Well, trying to achieve something which is really good. So I guess when you're striving for perfection or close to perfection, I guess I'm striving for a particular kind of gestalt experience that you want to feel when you're playing the game. At the different player counts with different people from different backgrounds, and that kind of what the feeling of the game is, and to create that feeling and to sustain that feeling for the entire play time is quite a difficult thing to do. And when you have some sessions of it that go really well and some that go not as well, it makes you want to kind of change things and blow things up and reinvent things. I mean, fundamentally with this game, the design that we have now is not completely unrecognizable from the beginning, from that session that we had in February last year. It's not like it's the same game. Yeah, I don't know. I do have like quite a lot of the old rulebook. So one of the things I did, this is on a bit of a tangent here, but like I kind of started with writing rulebooks. I think a lot of people don't do that. They probably start with like making components and like trying things out physically. Was I actually started by writing the rulebook. So we've had like a full rulebook of Pivot since like pretty much version 3 or 4 or something. And then that's been it. That's a document that I guess has been a living document I've iterated over time.
But like the complexity in terms of how, like, starting off with a game that's complex to design, and then changing it, pivoting so often. Yeah. How do you balance? Got to get one in there. Only one. I won't do it again.
Get her physically again.
I definitely won't do it again. Pivoting back to the topic at hand. But we're friends. Get it? Friends. Anyway. Ross,
that big gap had a lot of head shakes attached to it.
When you are developing a game, you said you're seeking perfection.
Oh, close to perfection. I guess it's very hard to get perfection unless you're Reiner Knizia or someone like that. But, yeah.
We will get into Reiner in a second. But aiming for perfection or close to perfection, how do you balance creating something that you think fundamentally is good with feedback from someone who might disagree or it's not their game? How do you allow for playtesting and feedback to come into your process and resisting some of that as well?
Yeah, I mean, we've done a lot of playtesting of the game. I mean, I don't know how many games we've probably played 100, 150 games of Pivot or something like that. I played more Pivot than pretty much any other game ever apart from chess. So like it's kind of weird. But also because there have been so many versions, it's not really the same version twice. But yeah, we've done obviously playtesting online on TTS, on VTT, in person, Ancient Robot Games, and in UK Games Expo, Tabletop Scotland, Origin, lots of places. So lots of different experiences and different types of people. So I guess when you're doing that, you just need to take into account to some extent who the people are that are playing, what they like to play. I always try and ask people, what kind of games they like to play, or knowing from where we've sourced the people from, I know what kind of things they're into. So you have a little bit of a perspective on that. And I guess you're also trying to think about, who the audience is, like who do I want to enjoy the game, who's it for. So there is an element of trying to match those things up. And if someone isn't quite the match for where you think it's going to be most enjoyable, is giving you feedback, obviously that maybe that has a lower weighting than someone that you think it's in the target zone for. So I guess that's kind of one thing. And then and as you have mentioned before to me, like ultimately I'm creating, it's my game. There's an element of like, what do I enjoy? What do I want it to be? I'm not sure if we're going to make any money doing this. It'd be good to wipe its face and to get it out there and have people playing it. But so it's really about what do I want to bring into the world? What kind of creative thing is it going to be? And so there's an element of like, I guess, do I enjoy playing it? Do I want to play it 100 times?
Yeah, there is something about like if everyone plays it and you want to make it as analogous to everyone possible, you're making the blandest game ever, because it is just like everyone thinks it's okay. That's kind of the best you can get with that. Whereas giving people like yourself who has made it the joy of playing, oh, this is the game I want to play, just because some other people might not gel with it is actually a positive thing, because you know that it's going to be some people's favorite game and it's going to be other people's, no, I don't really want to play that. But it's a really hard balance to go for. Were there any games you were saying that you always ask people what games they played or what things that they enjoyed before they sat down or as they were sitting down to give Pivot a go? Was there any like triggers for yourself of, I need to give this person a little bit less, or take their feedback a little bit less seriously if they said, for example, oh, I really love just Monopoly and I only ever play Monopoly ever, or anything else like that? Were there any ones where you were like both negatively and positively of someone going, oh, I really love this game and this game and this game, and you went, great, I really want to hear this person's feedback?
Bizarrely, when we were in Origins a few weeks ago, one of the guys was helping me understand. He was pitching it to people as being a bit like Monopoly, even though it isn't. So, like, there is an element of like, I guess if you like kind of business theory-oriented games that are not too complex, then I don't want to compare this to Monopoly because probably will turn off.
I mean, it's basically Monopoly. No, it's not.
Lots of people that are interested in it, but like,
where is Bond Street here on the map? I just need to check.
Yeah, no, I think in terms of the games that it's the most analogous to has kind of emerged over time. I didn't really seek to try and recreate any particular genre or any particular game. I mean, it's quite a unique. It is. Well, I don't think there's any game which is like it really. It's quite a unique combination of mechanisms and a feeling. But over time, I guess I've realized that it's quite close to a few different games, which not everyone will have heard of, but maybe geeks will have heard of. So I guess like, Reiner Knizia Stevenson's Rocket is one game that I mentioned, and also the kind of cube rails games generally. That's certainly kind of an influence because of the kind of stock holding, the network building part of it. There are also other games. I guess at the moment, the card system we have is similar to the card system in Concordia and also in Creta. It's not quite the same in that you don't have an option to get your hand back. It's just at the end of the round you get your hand back, but it's that kind of system. And then otherwise, the kind of element that we have, the customer demand, that kind of evokes kind of Stefan Dora's Hellas, and also the game called La Chita from the year 2000. There are elements of those, kind of the quarries and the former and the voice of the people in the latter that kind of. But that's pretty neat. Like when you're going into that kind of level of nicheness in kind of old school German games, I guess it's not necessarily something that you would use as a litmus test to see whether someone wants to play. It's more the kind of, I guess, the kind of Cube Rails, Stevenson's Rocket Acquire type thing, or the kind of maybe Concordia thing that kind of maybe more universal things that speak to it. But you've also got thematically, because of the nature of the game, it's not just about people that like board games per se and who are into the hobby. It's also about people that are into tech startups and business generally, and those kind of guys seem to really like it as well. It's something that's really good as like an event evening game for those people to play, and it's a medium complexity. So those people are usually a bit geeky anyway. So even if they don't play a lot of board games, maybe they play a bit of Catan and Carcassonne occasionally, a bit of Pandemic. Flexing to play Pivot isn't too dramatic. Obviously, really suits that audience as well. So
I've been interested to watch how you get energy from the people who play. And you went to UK Games and your booth was just packed all the time, game after game. And you recently got back from Origins in the States. So the game is obviously not out yet, but how are you using these expos in order to see what the feedback is, but also to gauge interest? Like, how are you factoring that in? And like, why UK Games and why Origins? Like, why going to expos versus sticking on VTT or
I guess I've been going to UK Games Expo since the pandemic. I've been to every Tabletop Scotland we've had so far. So I guess I was into the mindset of going to conventions. And I guess from my background in tech startups before, I've done exhibiting at shows. So I guess I had a little bit of experience of that. And I guess I quite like interacting with people an extrovert introvert maybe, so I quite like interacting with people. So yeah, it feels natural to have a presence at shows to engage with people and to kind of pitch the game to people. But we've done the playtesting zone at UK Games Expo last year, but I think we did like 4 games there, and I think we did about 4 or 5 games at TTS as well. Yeah, having the booth is it's another level. As you say, UK Games Expo, we were pretty much running continuous demos the whole time, and I had 4 of my friends there, which was really helpful. But yeah, we did a lot of demos there, and just having that number of I think we had like about 100 people play it. So that having that amount of feedback in such a compressed time period was really helpful, and actually iterated the game a huge amount between the 2 shows. There was only like couple of weeks between them, but did quite a big pivot between UK Games Expo and Origins.
Not you as well. No, you're gonna stop. There's 2 of them now.
And then Origins, so obviously UK Games Expo is quite easy to get to. Obviously, just a drive down from Edinburgh and friends there, and get an Airbnb and stuff. So it's not quite affordable. Origins is obviously a little bit more expensive. You've got to fly out there, but still did it quite. Origins is in Columbus, Ohio. I think it's analogous to UKG in the sense that it's not prohibitively expensive to have a stand there as like a first time exhibitor. Obviously there is the flight, the Airbnb and stuff, and I had someone help on the stand, so there's a bit of a cost to it, but it was really good to get out there. I think ultimately, hopefully we get to Kickstarter in February next year. Probably about 50% of the people at least I think that would buy it would be American. So it's good to go and play with lots of Americans and see if they like it or not. And they did. So it was really good. I would say with Origins, it is a different event to UK Games Expo. I hadn't quite realized the difference between these events before going. I think UK Games Expo has been growing bigger every year. I think it's almost the size of Gen Con now in terms of audience. It's getting that way anyway. Whereas Origins is actually quite a bit smaller in terms of the total number of people that go. It definitely has an effect on footfall. And it's also an event that has a bigger focus on playing games. Like they have a very big hall for playing games, like open play area. And they have this kind of concept of events where you're basically booking, you put a whole bunch of events. So you have like demos of your game as events on the system, and people you can even charge them money to come and play. I don't know if they would play a demo game, but there's a whole kind of thing around that. So, which I didn't really realize. So we did do a stand and had a couple of guys helping me. We played quite a few full games of Pivot. So we didn't do as many demos. It was actually more because it was over 4 days rather than 2.5. There's more time. There's fewer people, so there's kind of more opportunity for people to play full games on the stand. But a lot of people kind of gravitate towards that open play zone for playing things. So I think probably we definitely weren't mobbed in the same way that we were at UKGE. So I think, if I went there again, definitely looking into that events thing, it would be a thing. But yeah, it was really interesting experience to go there. I hadn't actually been to the States for a while, and yes, to get that validation from hopefully one of our bigger customer groups was worthwhile. We had a few different games with different key groups. So you had people that played like Cube Rails games, 18xx games, and they came and they had a really good time. We had people that were really into economic games and business games, and they came. So we had even though it wasn't a massive volume of people, we had quite representative groups come and play and really enjoy it. And had a couple of families with small children come and enjoy it as well. So it's it was a very interesting mix of people.
Did you find a difference between having a UK-based convention compared to the American-based convention simply from being from the UK yourself? Was there seen as any extra bonuses or negatives from being a British person in USA at a convention there? Something a bit more maybe unusual than having all of the regular American folk around showing off their games in Origins? I'm
not sure, really. I don't think it made a massive difference, the fact that I was from the UK. There are some people that say, I love your accent and all that kind of stuff. But
well, you'll love the game then.
Yeah. So you get a bit of that, but not that much. I guess some people were interested in the fact that I'm from Scotland. So, we talked a lot about that with some people. Obviously, a lot of Americans really like Scotland, so there's a bit of an angle there.
I'm Scotch-Irish myself.
Yeah, so they had all that, he had all that stuff. But yeah, no, it was positive. There's definitely no negativity around it. People were pretty positive about that, and maybe surprised a little bit sometimes with the way I sounded. But
great. Were they upset that this wasn't a Scottish game? Obviously, Pivot is on a world map showing the world. There was no one going, well, where's Scotland here?
I mean, technically, it's a little triangle there.
There's a little triangle.
At the top of which
of the triangle.
Yeah. No, I don't think anyone was really bothered by that. I mean, the 2 maps we've got on the show were the world map, the continents map, and the yellow sea map. They found, obviously, the world map, everyone kind of gravitates towards. They know what that is. Not everyone is as familiar with the yellow sea unless they're obviously from China, Korea, or Japan. But But yeah, it was no bones about that. The
So-
lack of Scotland.
Why was Pivot the first one? Obviously, you've been working on it for a while, but you, at least to presume, there are other games in you, right? You have this.
Not currently, maybe. I don't know. You were sitting.
He walked
maybe
in
slightly,
very cleanly. He was,
There was some. They were not physically inside.
I was having trouble walking.
Yeah, I was going to say. I mean, there was a little bit of a. Sorry.
Not physically inside me. Yeah, no. The idea with this game is it's part of a trilogy. So there's a couple of other games which I might change the title of, but we're currently called Parhelia and Panopticon. But they're
3 Ps.
Yeah, I don't know. I like the idea of them all starting with P for some reason. And the idea of this one's so Pivot set in 2075. These companies players duking out for control of these companies, developing products to meet demand. And then the next one was really around settling a colony in the nearest sort of habitable planet to the solar system. But again, continuing the theme of the companies from this game, because I quite like all the company names that we've got and the kind of logos and things that we've created for it. So the idea was to kind of have representatives of those companies on like a kind of a shared, generationship of some kind, and then they're settling that planet. And that's more of like a kind of a tile laying game. Again, some kind of inspirations from some games I've played, like Vital Lacerda's on Mars, or some of the Knizia tile I've ever played, and also again La Chita, which I really like. Some of the design elements from that, the kind of idea of like having different colonists and different colonies, and larger colonies absorbing the smaller ones, and then like the player with the kind of most colonists at the end winning. And I think also there's another element of inspiration that I had in that. But in generally, I guess the design for that is still pretty early on, right? So it's still kind of at the ideation stage, because it's consuming a huge amount of time to make this. The third game is even further in the future. It's like another 100 years in the future, and that's more another kind of shared experience type game. If you play things like War of Whispers or The King is Dead, those types of games, it's kind of like players influencing different factions in that kind of that futuristic state. So kind of an autocracy, kind of a sort of crime syndicate, the corporations from Pivot, anarchist Democrats. So basically controlling the different factions in that game in that kind of futuristic setting. So I guess the theme which links them all together is kind of a shared ownership, shared board, shared incentives. Yeah, that second one, it was really around. I don't know if you played a game called Medina by Stefan Dora, but like where when you're settling the colonies in the first time, the idea is that players can cooperate to kind of do the initial setup of the colonies, but at a certain point, someone's essentially going to claim them. So anyway, that was a bit of a ramble, but basically some ideas for these kind of...
Yeah, what made... obviously, you have these ideas like set up for games that you want to make. What was it that drove Pivot to be like, this is the first one, this is the one that will get all of this started?
So I can give you a boring answer because I don't really know. I can't remember. I think at one point I was thinking about a political game. I was thinking about a game which was, I don't know. I think I'd played or I'd seen Teomach and maybe some other political games I'd had a look at. And I just like the idea of creating something in that space. And again, maybe inspired by La Chita, which I guess was quite a big inspiration for me, how that plays in terms of its mechanics. And then there was going to be maybe a trilogy of games going from like some kind of revolution through to kind of democracy or whatever. But then at some point it changed into Pivot, and I can't quite remember when. I guess I have like quite a lot of experience, I guess, trying to do tech startup things. So I guess there's a certain amount of like internal knowledge of that world, and maybe that inspired it. But I can't remember the point at which that my brain pivoted from one thing to another.
I didn't say anything.
I think you take a drink every time someone says Pivot, and that's a hell of a night for you.
Well, one of the things I have experienced not only playing Pivot, but also playing with you, is this understanding that players should have some level of interaction. I know that you have thoughts about this. Player interaction is a decently large part. How do you see games out there right now? Maybe there's some that you think do this particularly well, or there's some that are very popular that maybe don't. But I know you have a take on this, and as to how you'd ideally, or the games that you gravitate towards in terms of how players interact.
Yeah, so I guess on my board game journey, collection journey, whatever, since 2016, I guess I probably, as many people do, I probably started by looking at the BG Top 100 at the time and trying and buying some things in that space and thinking about, okay, well, maybe I want to have like a rounded collection, have a range of different themes and mechanisms and things. And then I guess over time, I've gravitated towards the kind of the old school German end of the board game market, the kind of niche of kind of those older games from the kind of mid 90s to kind of the mid teens, maybe predominantly. Obviously, it's still getting made. Hopefully, Pivot is kind of an example of on the edges of that. But yeah, I guess so. It's games that have a shared board and have, sometimes have shared incentives that are relatively simple, so not too complex, and also have like a high degree of interaction between players, so they don't have personal player boards. I guess those are the kinds of games that I particularly enjoy. So yeah, as we've talked about already, designers like Reiner Knizia, Stefan Dora, Leo Colovini, Wolfgang Kramer, Michael Kiesling. Those are kind of like probably some of my favorite designers. So yeah, and my collection has morphed very much in that direction. So I kind of try to collect the works of the great masters and enjoy playing them. And enjoy playing lots of games, because I guess a lot of modern games, which are much more kind of, multiplayer solitaire type games, are quite complex and take quite a long time to play, and you might play one in an evening, whereas you can crank out like probably 4 or 5 Knizias in a row.
Speaking of Reiner Knizia, as not a lay person, I definitely know my Knizia games to an extent, nowhere near to the extent of yourself. Do you have any favorites that you would be like, this is a game I think everyone should play and everyone can play?
I mean that's a really difficult question.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the man has been prolific. I think he's got close to 800 games. I'm nowhere near like, there are people that I think I'm in a couple of discords that are about Knizia, and I've probably only played like 30 or 40 of his games, and some people play like
only
150, 200 of them. So like I'm a bit of a charlatan fraud. But but I played probably most of his most popular games by now, and probably own quite a lot of them. It really depends on who you are, I suppose, what is the answer to that question. I mean, there are 3 or 4 genres that he probably specializes in. So tile laying is probably one of his most famous ones, I guess, for adult gamers, because a lot of his 800 games are for children, and I haven't really delved into those. But for adult gamers, the tile laying, auctions, kind of dice games, push your luck games, negotiation, little small box card games that are sort of cheeky.
Penguin Party.
Yeah, Penguin Party. So yeah, those are the kind of games that you gravitate towards. Personally, I like them all. I probably prefer tile layers of those things, but obviously Stone Cold classics like Tigris and Euphrates and Yellow and Yangtze, or Huang as it's now called, obviously are really at the top end of that. But there's a lot, but they're a little bit heavier. There's quite a lot of much simpler tile layers. I've got one here on the table, coincidentally, one of his more recent ones, Rebirth, which is actually quite accessible, and one which probably I'd recommend for like families, like for quite young people to play as an accessible one. But there's lots of other ones like Babylonia and obviously classics like Samurai, not Tigris, but already mentioned that, Through the Desert. So like lots of Cascadero, lots of those. But the auction game is probably, Ra is a really, really great game. Anyway, I could probably talk about these and throw names out for a while, but yeah, there's lots of really, really good ones. I just definitely recommend people check it out. Check out his.
And it's not that he's stopping anytime soon.
No.
There are more and more Knizia games arriving all the time. Recent ones being the 2 ones from the Mythos saga, which is being created by Bitewing Games.
Yes.
Iliad and Icor, depending on how you say it. Have you given them a try yet?
So I bought them in Origins from the Bitewing stand. So I guess I've got to know the Bitewing guys through their Discord, and actually one of the people that designs for them played Pivot last night. So I had some feedback from him. But yeah, it's I've just played Iliad so far, and I really like that. Like another of his games which is really popular, one of his designs was really popular, is kind of a card game called Battle Line, and also kind of another one which is with a similar kind of mechanism called Shot and Totten. And those are like quite celebrated as some of his best games, and Iliad feels it's in the same kind of wheelhouse in terms of how good it is and how tight it is and how crunchy and experienced it is in such a small playtime with such a small design space and number of rules. It's a very good game. Have you played it?
Yes, I've played it and I also feel exactly the same way. So I just I think as a 2-player like clean playing game that you can teach in 3 minutes, really, but it's not about the mechanisms of the game. It's about the random setup. It's about the chance of tiles coming to your hand, but it's very much about the other person you're playing with and what their decisions are that influence all of your decisions. There is no plan you can have from the start that you then follow through and it's all perfect. It is real clever, the fact that it plays in 30 minutes, that it is a straightforward to understand but strategic heavy game with only integers from 1 to 5. Like that's it. There are numbers 1 to 5 in it, and there's one other type of tile that you have 3 of, and that's it. But it's a beautiful game as well. They've done a hell of a job. I always find with Knizia games, I feel like he's very mechanically minded. I find with a lot of his games, they are very much mechanics first and pushed to the forefront, and theme often doesn't tie in quite the same way as I've seen with a lot of other maybe just thematically heavier games, where the theme comes first to drive the atmosphere and the mechanics are driven to process that theme and basically make this whole world feel of a one within that game. I feel like Knizia stuff, often it's mechanically amazing, but I don't quite mentally attach the theme to the mechanics that I am doing. This might just be a personal thing, though. I don't know your thoughts about it at all.
Butterfly Garden was the reskinned of, was it Violet? Or
Indigo.
Indigo,
yeah.
And so two very different themes.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think that, well, I never played Indigo. We played Butterfly Garden. I find
it's going to take offense to this.
No, I find theme. I do find, and I do agree with you. Like, obviously, some of the games are probably heavier on the mechanics and the maths, maybe, but like, there's certainly some of his games that are very thematically relevant if you think about them from in a charitable way. So I think even Butterfly Garden is one of the Tigris and Euphrates often is mentioned as like one of those. It's because the rise and fall of civilizations kind of evokes that. So I guess theme in an abstract way that's evoked, I guess, is definitely there in a lot of his games. I mean, obviously modern art, it feels very thematic. I guess when it comes to the tile layers, maybe it's a little bit more difficult sometimes to have that theme come through. But certainly, there's definitely, it's probably a mixed bag, I guess.
I think I definitely agree with the kind of like semi-abstracted nature of the theme of like, you're laying down those tiles to create a butterfly garden. Like all of that kind of makes sense. I guess I'm thinking of maybe some of the more like modern driven games where it is something like Critter Kitchen or something, where everything is in service of you having tiny little animals going to make wonderful, beautiful dishes for the customers who are coming in, and everything mechanically is kind of driven towards that.
Or like Vital Lacerda's games, which are very much, almost faithfully representing what the thing is, that the theme of the game.
Almost simulation style things for it, completely. Yeah, it's an interesting one because I love so many of Reiner Knizia's games, like a huge amount of them. But as you say, there are those categories of games that he tends to do with the tile laying, the kind of push your luck, and the auction particularly as being a big thing that he obviously loves and is going to share. Do you feel like there is like a peak of each of those? The one, if you could only ever play one of his tile laying games, one of his auction games, and one of his
stupid card games,
one of his push your luck games, which one would you choose for each of those?
Well, we've already mentioned a few of them, so I mean, again, it does depend on who you are. But see, Tigris and Euphrates is such a phenomenal design for tile laying. There are also quite a few games that are less well known. Maybe I'll mention some of them rather than mention the games that
the question.
So one game that I really like is called Orongo, and Orongo is kind of like a tile laying and auction game combined. And there's actually been a new version that came out recently called Nyakus with a different theme. But that's a really compelling design. It's really simple. You're essentially it's like a closed auction, so you're bidding with shells for initiative to place tiles on a map of Easter Island to connect together different pairs of items, and then basically build moai on the edge of the island, and the first person to play all their moai wins. But that's, I guess, in the Knizia file world, that's definitely heralded as a really great game, which is probably underlooked, probably because of some production issues. And another one which is really good, which actually Bitewing have done a new version of recently. I have the older version, Municipium. They've done a new version called Silos. That's another departure from him. So that's not one of these top games. So I'm not answering your question, but it's kind of like almost one of the few attempts that he's done at kind of area control. But it's in a really interesting way because you have kind of spaces on the board, and you have kind of dudes, and you're kind of moving them around. It's kind of like kind of musical chairs. You're kind of moving them around between these different areas and scoring them at different points. But it's a really tight and close game. So there's a couple of games there that are quite niche. I'll give you another one. Again, it's got two versions. It's got a sort of classic version and one that Bitewing have done, and that's Chin. QIN, for those that can't get the pronunciation. I guess it's probably not a Chinese hinterland themed game, but it's not like, but I don't know how thematic it is. But it's kind of almost like a dominoes game, simple game on the board. But yeah, the new version Gazebo, which I think Bitewing's bringing out, and I think that those are really interesting. Those are just popping into my head as I'm talking to you. But as it maybe more interesting, like really good games that he's produced that maybe people don't talk about as much.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other games not made by Dr. Knizia that you've been playing recently?
I don't think there are any other games. Not trying out, but all of them are Knizia games if you get down to it.
I mean, I'm probably spending as much money buying old games on eBay and Board Game Geek Market as people spend on like Kickstarters and loads of bling, just because I'm trying to seek out all these like old games. So Stefan Dora in particular, he's another really good designer in that kind of same mold. So games like Medina, like Hellas, which is quite rare and difficult to get, which I managed to get a copy of, and Marrakesh. Like he's rising as like one of my favorite designers at the moment, and like those games are all like 25, 30 years old. But I'm getting to the limit of like there aren't that many more old games I really want. I think I've got like most of these like old classics now, but I certainly play a bunch of those. These days, there are new games I buy, but they tend to be Knizia games and Knizia adjacent games. So probably, yeah. The games that Bitewing produces tend to be the ones I'm most interested in these days.
It's awesome. I mean, the amount that we have talked about Knizia, he definitely owes us some money, I think, at this point. Sponsored. Our entire year's funding should come from Reiner Knizia, which is what we always hope. That is amazing, Tom. Thank you so much for coming and joining us. If people are interested in Pivot or other games that you're doing, what would be the best way to follow you or get in contact with you?
So I guess ahead of UK Games Expo this year, I kind of rapidly went around creating social media accounts. So I'm going to continue posting on all of those. So we have like an Instagram and a Threads and a YouTube and a Facebook stuff. So people can follow those if they have those things. We have a website as well, teomachgames.com, and I guess the Pivot game is on BGG, so I guess I'm going to continue posting on the forums there about it, and advertising opportunity to do more playtesting, try out the kind of tabletop simulator, the VTT, the BGA versions, as we sort of make them more publicly available in the next month or two. So yeah, probably those, and I think we'll obviously have an email list that they can join as well about the Kickstarter.
So what are the handles?
The handles,
as in at?
Oh, it would be at Teomach Games, so that's TEOMACH Games. And
if they want to come and play it, would they be able to do at any conventions coming up?
I guess the next phase is really kind of doing this sort of final balancing and play testing. Probably quite a lot of that will be online, so on those platforms I mentioned already, and also probably in person. So a lot of that would be in Edinburgh. So if they're based in Scotland, probably maybe coming to Ancient Robot Games and playing them, or otherwise have some other way of doing it locally. The plan is to kind of bring it to the Kickstarter in February. Definitely planning to go to some events next year. So looking at AirCon, UKGE again, maybe Gen Con and SN if we can get that, and if you get, I guess, some funding from the Kickstarter to be able to go to those. So yeah.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you again. As always, I have been Dougal.
And I've been Gilb.
And this has been edited by Ryan Scott. Thanks for joining us.